It's a policy talk. Let's just start with human talk. For the last 3 years, twice a month, I've been on a community college campus teaching a day, interviewing students, faculty, governance board members, and so on. And if I see more people who want to be policemen, firemen, EMTs, interior designers, who are hung up because they're in courses where they can't factor trinomials or rationalize binomial surd denominators, it just tears at my mathematician's heart. 35,000 California community college students repeated a DevEd math course for the 5th time or greater, while the system had to turn away 144,000 students. This is a human catastrophe, and we can fix it, right? And we can fix it pretty easily. The problem is that we can't fix it campus by campus, because if you're working on a campus, you're constrained by national agreements, by what other people do, articulation agreements locally. The solution to the DevEd pathway problem requires state-level work and national agreements. There's an interlocking set of problems. The first is the goals are wrong. Fewer than 6% of community college math students actually take calculus. More students need statistics and modeling than need the traditional pathway to engineering. In 1950s, when DevEd was designed, the only math pathway was toward engineering mathematics, which is important. Today, in 4-year research universities, fewer than half the students who take a beginning college math course take pre-calculus calculus. Statistics is growing quickly. General math is growing quickly. And we need, every few years, to revisit the goals of the enterprise, not just tinker around with the structures. And that requires state-level work. But you guys in Tennessee have been particularly good at thinking about these questions. Once you try to deal with the content that matters to people and actually prepares them for the jobs that exist tomorrow, not the jobs that exist in 1955, right? There's a set of interlocking problems. Placement, which is a criminal enterprise. More than half the students take a placement test for their math. At the end of an orientation day, there's been no disclosure of how consequential this is. And some places, a growing number of places, are requiring disclosure, a week of preparation, announcement of the requirements for passing the placement test, and what it means to you if you don't do your best. And we're seeing students save 1 to 2 full semesters rather than being placed because they're tired and an advisor tells them it doesn't matter. Advising. Most of the students today are not just 18-year-old directionless students. They're people who are cashing in their 401ks because they're desperate for a job. You can see the change of who's in these classes. They're looking for programs, not isolated courses. We used to think of DevEd as a series of courses and students would be placed in them. Most of our students need to be placed in programs that lead to jobs that we need for local economic development. That requires state-level work, accelerated pathways. Most students who are close to ready should just be put in gateway courses. The data is overwhelming that they do better than being put in developmental ed. Those who aren't ready need to be in 1-year extended versions that just bypass the burial ground that is developmental education. Structure, improvement infrastructure. In most states, people are working on DevEd, but the faculty are told to just improve it. You can't improve it by yourself because the institution down the road won't agree to your changes. This requires state-level leadership and policy making. Now, fortunately, the major American math associations have agreed that the goals of DevEd are wrong, and they're proposing new pathways that lead to work and better mathematics. the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, Los Medanos College, the Dana Center at the University of Texas have organized coalitions of systems and states building these new pathways. You can either link up to these things, or you can build them yourself within your states. The early results are very promising. In fact, the Los Medanos data just came in, which is the first full year pilot. More than 90% of the students, most of whom were placed in arithmetic, completed a college credit stat course in a year, took a national test, and outperformed national norms. When students are in programs that enable them to see the ultimate purposes of being in college for them, they're much more motivated to succeed. Then finally, we need to replace structures built in the 60s that aren't relevant today. Students need to go into programs, and student support needs to be where the students are. Overwhelmingly, in interviewing DevEd students and campus support personnel, the personnel say, if we only saw the students earlier, when you fall behind in a math course, it's very hard to catch up. We need to think of restructuring student support and advising so it's there at day one with students. This requires your action at the state level, and small changes can dramatically improve the success of people who are desperate for better lives through education.
And next we're going to have Katie talk about the work that's going on in California through the Acceleration Project. So Katie?
Okay. So my name is Katie Hern, and I'm an English instructor at Chabot College, and I'm also director of a project called the California Acceleration Project. And our goal is to support the 112 California community colleges to redesign and accelerate their developmental English and math programs. And California, I don't know if you realize, is a very decentralized system. System, it feels like kind of not quite the right word. And so the work that we've been doing, even though I agree with Uri about the need to make this a larger system-wide effort, we really have had to convince each college to think about redesigning and mobilize the faculty to do that, to initiate that redesign themselves. So I'm going to just share a little bit about how we've made that case to faculty, because as you're thinking about going back into your own context, you're going to need to think about how to bring in additional people into the conversation, how to bring faculty into the conversation, how to build, if you decide to accelerate your remedial sequences, how to build that and build momentum around that. So one of the things we do is we always start by talking about the problem, which we've started talking about today, which is that the more levels of developmental courses a student has to go through, the less likely that student is to ever complete English and math. And that's research from CCRC and the Achieving the Dream schools. Huge data set, over 250,000 students. And we stripped out a group of students that was lost in the pipeline, the people who never enrolled in the first place. We just wanted to track those who did, so we took the Achieving the Dream data and said, okay, if they enrolled 3 levels or more below in reading, if they enrolled 2 levels or more below, and sort of disaggregate that data to see how bleak the picture is for students the lower down they're placed. Are these numbers familiar to you in the room? 3 levels down, if you place 3 levels down in reading, 24% of those who enrolled in the sequence actually completed a college-level gatekeeper course. And in math, what do you think? Worse? Better? Yeah, worse. Way worse. So if you place 3 levels or more below college math, 10% of the students go on to complete a college-level gatekeeper course from that Achieving the Dream study. So that is a bleak, bleak landscape. And it's a national problem. It's not one college that's doing a bad job. It's a system problem. Yeah.
I interviewed the director of institutional research at a large California community college, and I wanted to interview all the students who started in arithmetic who finished sophomore math over 3 years. I was expecting to spend a day interviewing them. The IR director came back and said, Rosa Martinez. Total data set.